Webcomics. In the earliest days of the internet, webcomics were one of the most popular forms of entertainment. Since in the early 2000s dial-up internet was still the standard, and loading a video could take 5 weeks, webcomics were a very easy way to gain a following online, since it just needed to be an image that loaded up. Back in the 2000s, webcomics were incredibly popular. Be it Penny Arcade, Control-Alt-Delete, or whatever floats your boat, they made a name for themselves. The quality of those webcomics nowadays can definitely be put into question. You'll get your day in the spotlight someday, Buckley. But right now, we're going to put our focus on one very specific webcomic creator, and possibly the biggest downfall of a webcomic creator on the internet. This is Tom Preston, also known as Andrew Dobson. Dobson made a very popular webcomic in the early 2010s, and probably holds the record for peaking too early in his career and for being the biggest punching bag of a webcomic artist ever. And today, we're going to talk about why this is. This is the story of Dobson.
I don't think this bubble can get much bigger.
Nonsense!
No!
Dobson was mostly unknown in the early 2000s. Well, that's what he would have you believe anyway. That's a story for much later. Andrew would remain on the down low on the internet through most of the 2000s, drawing art, which is heavily inspired by 90s anime and Nintendo games. The anime influence in his artwork is very blatant. You can tell he was one of the original weebs of the 90s. And now that I'm mentioning it, I'm going to have to bring this up. Dobson's story is very similar to another person I've already covered. Movie Bob. The two are incredibly similar in many ways. Both were born in the 80s, they're now in their 40s, both are obsessed with Nintendo, both have a very similar political leaning, both are very feminist. You could look at them from far away and mistake them for the same person. But they went on completely separate paths. Movie Bob went on to become a movie critic, and Dobson went on to make webcomics. Their upbringing was also incredibly similar. They were both outcasts and were bullied for their obsession with Nintendo and geek stuff, but Dobson's bullying was apparently so bad he had to move states, specifically Minnesota, where he then attended the Minneapolis College of Art and Design in the early 2000s. Now this is a very prestigious college to go to. It costs quite a penny to go here, so Dobson was very privileged to be able to attend this college, but he only viewed them in a negative light. He basically admitted he dropped everything they taught him in order to go back to his idea of how art should be, which tells me they probably criticized his art, which is a college, they're going to do that, that's their job, and he didn't take too kindly to that. Major foreshadowing. Also, since he's balding in his 20s, God, I hate seeing myself in these people. He wore a stupid fedora every day to class, and it got him the nickname Hat Andy, which sounds like a Linkara side character.
I am a man!
After graduating from college, Dobson would mostly post art and comics on his DeviantArt, a lot of which are, like I said, based off of his favorite properties he grew up with, notably 90s anime and Nintendo. Oh boy, does he love himself some Nintendo. He's not Movie Bob levels of obsessed with them, but he's close. He would express his fanboyism for Nintendo in one of his older comics called Danny and Spot. Danny's too focused on the AAA next-gen high-budget games on the PS3 and 360, but Spot is here to show him games on the Wii are way better because they're fun! Oh, look at these guys playing games the boring way. But look at that. They're having fun on the Wii, flailing around like they have Parkinson's. Now, that's fun. That's what gaming is all about. Oh, those adult games are too serious and boring. The Wii's just like the wheel on the round earth. It's not a fad. So I'm not showing this off just to expose Dobson's fanboyism, it's also the prototype format for a vast chunk of his work in the future. This person is stupid, but this person is a smart and informed one who aligns with Dobson's own views. This is what many have dubbed a strawman comic. The person who they don't agree with has their arguments boiled down to the point it's easy to debunk in a few comic panels. Also, they're ugly, fat, angry, or just stupid. Dobson loves this format, as he would use it for years, especially in 2010 when a little game called Metroid Other M came out. Everyone who knows about Metroid Other M knows it is a very controversial game and considered one of the worst Metroid games, and Dobson defended this game with his dying breath. He considered it the best Metroid game, and considered Metroid Prime, one of the most loved Metroid games, to be the worst one. An act of true contrarianism. He would constantly get into arguments online about it, even years after its release. So Dobson, very early on, was already very combative and argumentative with people he didn't agree with. I just want you to imagine what it would be like with something that actually mattered. There was no moment of peace or him starting off calm and mild-mannered. From the very early days he was on the web, he was already stirring the pot with other people. Even in his DeviantArt blog posts, there was constant complaining and arguments. In 2006, he made this blog post where he detailed he was hooked up with a Jewish girlfriend and then had Hanukkah with her and her family, where he was miserable because it was a lot more boring compared to Christmas. He started drawing an art piece to express how miserable he was, and then his girlfriend saw the picture he drew and naturally took offense to it. He took something that mattered a lot to her and made it about himself. You could probably guess how the relationship turned out after that. So this would continue on for a few years. He would make little tiny comics and art pieces on his DeviantArt, argue with people. He would make animations and demo reels on YouTube to show off his animation skills.
Hey, paisano!
Oh my god. Mario, Luigi, Princess, Toad!
Who did you expect? Pee-wee Herman?
One day, he created this little comic he dubbed the Potato Comic. A basic little comic where Dobson makes himself dinner with a single potato and then proceeds to make a pop culture reference. This one comic would inspire Dobson to truly start his career. A career for the ages.
You found me!
Of course! You stick out like a big sore pink thumb!
Less talky, more wishy!
I wish the whole world was back to the way it's supposed to be.
In January of 2011, Dobson would create his most popular comic, So You're a Cartoonist. This was a webcomic dedicated to Dobson showing off his struggles as an online cartoonist, detailing his early life and upbringing in a very comedic and exaggerated fashion. And it was a surprise hit! A lot of artists were able to relate and laugh at all the crap Dobson went through to get where he was now. Around the same time making this, he also collaborated with internet musician Brentalfloss to make a comic series for him. So Dobson is finally getting recognition after all these years. But as anyone should know, fame is a package deal. When you get a ton of people looking up to you and enjoying your work, you also get a lot of people who think you could do better. And here comes the most well-known fact about Dobson. Andrew Dobson cannot take criticism. Now I want to make one thing very clear here. I am not an artist. I am not an art critic. I can't really judge how good or bad Dobson's art is because I have very low standards to consider something good. I mean, look, my art skills are basically Chris Chan monkey scratchings. I cannot draw worth a damn. So anything that could potentially be wrong with Dobson's art, I won't be able to notice. But I know some people who do draw are probably pulling their hair out just seeing some of Dobson's work. Dobson gets a lot of flack and criticism for his art skills. The ordinary online artist is always looking to improve their work. They will always want to evolve and grow in their hobby. That's why they always ask for critiques and ways they can improve. That's a big part of art culture. Andrew Dobson is not the ordinary online artist. If you're an artist and you get a comment that says something like, "This art piece sucks and so do you," that's just a throwaway comment that helps no one in any way. Comments that are saying stuff like, "You could do some more shading here, or fix this up, or change this to make it better," that's a suggestion on how to improve. To Andrew Dobson, these two comments are the exact same. You cannot criticize Dobson's work in any way. It does not matter how nice you are or how good your intentions are. If you criticize his art, he will argue with you, he will mock you, and he will block you. In the comment section of his art pieces, you can find long strings of him arguing with people over his art, all the time. He will make people criticizing his art the punchline in some of his comics, where they're a dumb poo-poo head and he's the smart one. He never tries actually debunking their criticisms, he usually just goes, "I don't care," and they're just mad. Because of Dobson's absolute rejection of any criticism whatsoever, a result of this is, his art has remained stagnant since the early 2000s. Artists love when their art improves over the years, you know, when your style develops. I'm not even an art person, and even I can tell, there is very little development in Dobson's art. It's the same 90s manga and anime styled stuff as always been, because he refuses to take any suggestions to change it or stylize it. He's also very self-aware about his art and his career not developing. He has multiple comics talking about how pathetic he is. But you're doing this to yourself. There's no point in being self-aware if you aren't going to do anything about it. Oh, and that whole 90s anime inspiration is another thing to put up on Dobson's wall of shame. The man has a hate boner for any anime airing past 1999, but loves the stuff he grew up with and will only take cues from that. One time, he tried stylizing Steven Universe characters in the style of one of his favorite 90s Japanese artists. It did not turn out well. Part of his seething hatred for more adult-oriented anime blowing up in popularity in the early 2000s is because he thinks it actually had a negative impact on his life. Okay, so I just want you to just try and wrap your head around this. Dobson's dream since childhood was to be an animator at Disney. He would write and read about it, while his family said it was a bad idea. That's why he went to college. Then, in 2002, a movie called Treasure Planet came out. I just want to say, Treasure Planet is my favorite Disney movie. That movie is a damn classic. It has soul. Dobson, however, thinks differently of it. He thinks the movie was inspired by the more adult anime around the time. It tried to be much more mature than the typical Disney film, but the movie bombed at the box office, and because it bombed, Disney fired a ton of animators, and this was when they started pushing more into CGI because of it failing. So now, his dream of working at Disney was now shot because Treasure Planet bombed, which he thinks was inspired by anime, so therefore anime ruined his career and therefore his life. You got that? I know it seems like we're just jumping around all over the place, but that's really the best way to look at Dobson. It's not really a straightforward story, it's more like an anthology of events that come together and really explain why things are the way they are with him. Of course, being a controversial artist, you can't not have a tracing scandal! Take a look at this art piece of Dobson in a lot of British media, and tell me what looks out of place here. If it wasn't plainly obvious, that Big Bang back there is blatantly traced, and even worse since he planned on selling this at a convention. People were very quick to notice and called Dobson out for this, which Dobson didn't take too well.
You didn't stick with your original drawing of Big Ben, which is absolutely fine and was stylized to the rest of the picture. You didn't also do this for the TARDIS, which I could probably bring up, but the point is that it's pretty easy to focus on Big Ben because it sticks out like a sore thumb.
This also isn't the only time Dobson has done something illegal when it comes to selling art. He also attempted to sell art with a ton of licensed characters he didn't own and was called out for this as well. And of course he made a comic in response, because of course he would. And finally, we have to talk about the Metroid Commission. Not only does he have horrific taste in the Metroid series, but when it came to actually drawing said series, it was just as bad. In 2014, someone commissioned Dobson to draw a picture of Samus breaking out of her power armor while fighting Ridley. Dobson asked for $45 up front for it, and he would send in progress of the picture, which of course the customer asked for touch-ups. This would continue on for a few weeks, until the pic was finally done. 4 months later! It took him 4 months to finish this picture, which is of average quality and not asking for anything big. Oh, and by the way, the Ridley in the background is traced. It was later revealed that the thing was actually set up by 4chaners, who wanted to see what would happen if they commissioned him. After he found this out, he was, in his own words, traumatized. He refused to do any commissions for at least 2 years, but he didn't know about this until after the fact. You can look online and see what took so much of Dobson's free time. Arguing with people. We have only scratched the surface, so buckle up. It's time to delve even deeper into Dobson's dark spiral. Now, like I've said before, Dobson and Movie Bob have a lot of similarities. This also includes their politics and their moral beliefs, which are damn near identical. No, Dobson isn't nearly as extreme as Movie Bob was. He doesn't wish for eugenics or some way of wiping out people who disagree with him. But basically, if I were to go over everything, it'd be just a Diet Coke version of Movie Bob, so I'll keep it brief. Dobson is very heavy left-leaning, he's very feminist, and fights for groups that are marginalized. He talked a lot about Goo Brigade and a bunch of other things of that matter. He hates any sort of objectification of women and sexism in any industry, and has made a ton of comics about it. You've probably seen this same song and dance 1,000 times already. Most notably, he's a big ally of the LGBTQ community, especially in the Western animation scene. And by that I mean you take off the G's, the B's, the T's, and everything else, and you're left with what most of his career consists of. Nothing but L's. It's no secret, Dobson had a huge bias towards lesbian couples. He would draw them, and nothing but them, constantly. You can probably count on one hand all the male gay couples he's drawn, but the ladies get all the love. You could start a seafood restaurant with all the damn clam slamming going on in Dobson's art galleries. And I'm not saying that to be offensive, I'm saying that because this is the most thinly veiled representation I've ever seen. It's pretty obvious what's actually going on here. Dobson is more than likely getting his jollies from drawing this. And some might be thinking, well, Mush, you're just being judgmental. There's nothing inherently wrong with a grown man in his 30s drawing cartoon lesbians being cute and mushy. And well, maybe you're right, but I have a counterpoint. We have to go back to Dobson's old DeviantArt gallery. Around 2009, Dobson created a comic series called Alex the Pirate, a little comic about a ragtag team of pirates going on wacky pirate adventures. There's a bunch of anime tropes tossed in here. You got the oblivious to love boy, the pervert grandpa, but then you got the Dobson touch. A lesbian pirate. The dynamic here is, the main character, Alex, definitely not Captain Syrup from Wario Land, has the hots for the boy pirate whose name is Sam. Seems the top surgeon went well. Then there's the lesbian pirate named Atia, who has the hots for Alex. And then there's Sam, who only cares about treasure. It mainly focuses on Alex and Atia and their wacky shenanigans of love, in quotations. Very progressive for the time. Progressive in the terms that Dobson's other hand was progressively going down below while drawing these because this is 100% fuel for him. Earlier on in the comic's life, everything was very tame. There was even a whole gag with Alex being incredibly androgynous so people thought she was a boy. But as it went on, the androgynous look was completely dropped for something more voluptuous, and then the antics with her and Atia started being a bigger focus, with Alex getting groped, constantly taking baths, and always finding ways for them to take their clothes off with each other. Yeah, this man is clearly drawing this for his own personal needs. You really expect me to believe, in his refusal to change after all these years, he's changed in that regard? Nah, ain't happening. This comic is for him, and so is him drawing all those couples. It was also a pioneer in creating girl boss characters, while they flat out say they're better than men in one comic. Man, someone get this man a dummy mommy. A dobby mommy, if you will. There's also this comic where he coined the term lesbian kick, and I think he actually tried to make this a meme or something. He really thought it would catch on. He made shirts of it. You know, Dobson, if you really want to draw naked ladies in a mediocre 90s anime art style, you could have just started an NSFW account. I've seen worse artists get a following. He wanted to get off and get clout at the same time, and that's a recipe for disaster. Anytime he made a new art piece for a new show with gay women in it, people would automatically assume it was him thirsty again, which it probably was. Anytime someone would ask him, why don't you draw something other than lesbians, he usually points to one of like 3 pictures he's drawn of others, and that's about it. Of course people are going to find it weird when a man in his mid-30s who has drawn comics about women taking their clothes off all the time starts exclusively drawing lesbians. Of course people are going to take it the wrong way. You can bet Dobson would argue about this as well. Oh boy, when his popularity got boosted, so did the level of arguing. He was arguing with more people than ever before. Not just for art critiques, but also for him constantly sipping over lesbians, his constant bad takes on things, and the absolute ridiculous claims he held. If you didn't like something that was diverse or had a woman in the starring role, you just hated women. Can't be for anything else. He did this with Star Wars and Marvel, because of course he did. He's checking off all those boxes. You didn't like something he did, you were some istrophobe. It's classic egocentric behavior. It was very easy to get into an argument with Dobson for just about anything, and because of this fact, he became the prime target for massive trolling.
Here we go. Any second now. Any second now.
Yuck!
Dobson was very famous for being very easy to troll and make fun of. It was not hard at all to agitate him. Over the years, people had found ways to mess with him in increasingly over-the-top ways. I already mentioned the Samus Commission. Well, that one wasn't really a troll, more like a psyop. In 2012, someone walked up to his booth at a convention and sprayed him in the face with water before booking it. Dobson had a Minecraft server he spent a ton of free time on, making all these little art projects on it, until 4chan found out about it and, of course, did their 4chan thing. It wasn't just trolls with no life either. Dobson was getting angry on every website. He was even getting riled up and blocking people on Miiverse. Miiverse! Even little kids knew this guy was a walking punchline. And most famous of all, one day in the mid-2010s, he made a certain comic. Dobson went to a convention where he was there to sign and sell artwork. While he was at said convention, he witnessed a confrontation two people had while signing that stuck with him enough to make a comic based on it. Tell your girls to smile! Axeman, what are you doing? Leave that poor woman alone! Never fear, Dobson is here to save the day!
Help! A bluebird of a door's attacked me with a baseball bat!
Now, no way this happened in real life, so this is probably just a power fantasy of what he should have done. But remember, this is supposedly based on something that actually happened. Some dude was actually taking pictures of a girl in a Power Girl costume, and yeah, it did happen. And then the picture showed up online. So, a stark contrast to what the Dobson comic was showing. Not only is she not offended, she is presenting herself to the camera! She was into it! You can get a glimpse of Dobby in the background, no doubt fuming this altercation was happening, and made her the victim in the comic when she isn't one. This man fabricated this entire scenario in his head. This comic was torn to shreds. People had a field day with this comic. It was the funniest thing Dobson had produced in his entire career. People started making parodies of it where the ending was changed, or the characters were changed.
Oh, yeah!
Tell your girls to smile.
Whatever you're talking about, I don't care. Put Buzz back the way he was, then get lost.
This is probably the most famous thing Dobson has ever made. If you know about Dobson anyway, it was probably from this comic and its many parodies. Dobson was already seen as someone to make fun of on social media for a while, not only for not being able to take criticism, not only for calling people every istophobe in the book, but for other such incidents, like this one, on August 11th, 2015. Zelda Williams saying it was a hard day for her, and Dobson responds with a meme telling her to calm thy tits. Well, Dobson, that's one way to respond to a woman having a hard day. I wonder what could be causing her distress. I wonder what tragic event could have happened the year previous to make that day hard for her. Well, what a thing to say to a woman on the anniversary of her father's death. He deleted the tweet, and it took a heavy amount of pushback for him to finally apologize to her. The amount of backlash Dobson got from that was enormous. Now, imagine that, but instead of people being angry, they're laughing at you. Also around this time, blogs about Dobson's history and antics started popping up, so some of these were actually really helpful for the research of this video, so if anyone who ran those blogs see this, thank you for your kind work, soldier.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part too.
Due to the political climate, the state of Twitter around the time, and now this ass-platting he was now getting, Dobson was easier to rile up more than ever before. This was like getting sprayed in the face with a gun. How would he respond to all this criticism? I'll tell you how. Death threats. So many death threats, he ended up getting banned from Twitter and Facebook. Now, a ton of people were digging into and learning about Dobson's past, just to clown on him some more. They found about all his past work, his plagiarism, and his crippling fear of carnival masks. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, Dobson has a huge fear of carnival masks. So much in 4chan threads where they were making fun of him, they would constantly post carnival masks to scare him off from reading the threads. If you want to scare your local Dobson off, wear one of these. This also led to a bunch of images and memes connecting Dobson to air pumps and... Well, I couldn't ignore it forever, but we must. It is a part of Dobson's story, after all.
I don't think he's gonna stop.
Do you remember earlier when I made a joke about Dobson potentially making an NSFW account? Well, it turns out he had already beaten me to the punch. Did you really think Dobson's only trace online was his old DeviantArt? Oh, no. He had another identity at one point. Just like the Lightbringer and his love for the green M&M, Dobson had his own skeletons in the closet. Dobson had another DeviantArt account dedicated to the thing he loved. Under the alias Caddy N, this was Dobson's account dedicated to his love for inflation. No, not the thing currently affecting the US, but the act of filling people, in this scenario women, specifically anime women from the 90s, with air. Whether it be the whole body or specific parts, Dobson was the one drawing this under this account. The art styles are damn near indistinguishable. It was not hard to trace this back to Dobson. Dobson would post a ton of art under this account, not just to DeviantArt, but to a whole other website, known as Expansion Man. Oh God, what have I gotten myself into? The website is exactly what you think it is. A website for Dobson to post his artwork of girls getting blown up like balloons. You can view all sorts of comics, art pieces, and even some Flash games. Oh boy, inflation games! You know the game Kaboom by Activision, the classic where you catch bombs thrown at you from above? Well, how would you like to play a remake of that, but instead of catching bombs, you're instead blocking nails to keep them from popping inflated anime girls? Video games have peaked. Sadly, it looks like the other two games have been lost to time. The download links don't work, and that's a shame. This one looked like a real winner. That goes for most of the site too. Most of it has been lost to time, and only certain sections of it work anymore. Because you could probably imagine, Dobson didn't really want this still up for people to find, so it's been shut down for well over a decade now. And a lot of you are probably wondering, why am I bringing this up? Why is this relevant? Am I just clowning on a guy for having a weird attraction to something? Am I kink shaming? Well, to be honest, the whole inflation thing isn't even that notable. You used to be able to go on the front page of DeviantArt and you get smacked with inflation art. It's like basic level internet weirdness. It's not even anything really all that bad at the end of the day. All this really comes down to is the hardening of the PP, and there are plenty of places you can go to do that. The reason why I'm bringing this up is the fact that Tom Preston, Andrew Dobson, made this website all those years ago. The same Andrew Dobson who would go on tirades on Twitter on objectifying women and making them appeal to the male gaze, and to stop doing sexist crap, making comics where he beats up guys taking pictures of boobies on ladies who are 100% consenting. He's the one who made this. An entire website dedicated to blowing ladies up, turning them into actual objects where you protect them in Flash games from being popped. Dobson did all of that. He's been throwing stones in his glass house the entire time. Rules for thee and not for me. That's the name of the game here. And yeah, of course, once his career took off, he tried scrubbing any and all traces of this past life, but we all know once something is on the internet, it is next to impossible to take it down. So the archives exist and they'll stay there. A monument to a man's inflated ego. A reminder of who he once was and how this will be his legacy on the web. Almost 20 years of art. From inflation to a slow and painful degradation into the punching bag he would become. After being a walking meme and a punching bag for a couple of years, after being the subject of many a Tumblr blog, in 2020, Dobson would completely disappear from the internet. He abandoned his Tumblr, he completely wiped all of his comics off his website, and now the whole website is empty. It's still up, but there's nothing there. It's a ghost of a website now. Everything from Dobson himself has been completely wiped. Everything I had to use here I had to get from third-party sources, including those blogs. It really does seem Dobson just packed everything up and left without telling anyone. Why did Dobson do this? Why did he just delete everything and leave? Well, it's widely believed this was actually a result of interference from his family. His family apparently told him to touch grass. Well, that's simplifying it too much. It is actually believed that Dobson's brother was getting a very high-profile government job, and his brother simply being related to Dobson, he lost said job opportunity. Dobson's actions of threatening people online, threatening politicians, and telling them to off themselves costed his brother a job. And so his family told him to just stop posting online, and it seems like that's what happened. Dobson was the tale of a man who refused to listen. He refused to take criticism, he refused to do what many believed was better for him. Your good intentions meant nothing to him. You were just a troll or a bigot if you disagreed with him. He stuck to that mantra, and he never let it go. It didn't help that the things he was making constantly were for him and him alone, and claimed it was him showing support for marginalized groups. After years and years of being a walking punchline, he decided the best thing to do was to leave. 3 years later, and surprisingly, Tom Preston still has not returned to the internet. All the blogs dedicated to Dobson, all the people documenting his history, have dried up, because he just isn't here anymore. The So You're a Cartoonist website is still up, which means he's probably still paying for the domain. But there's nothing on here, so he's paying for essentially nothing. Maybe he's planning for a big comeback, as a changed man, no longer the weird, toxic individual he once was. But honestly, if you ask me, the internet did more damage to Tom Preston than anything. I think it's better he stay off it, and live his life away from it. Dobson spent his whole life wanting to draw. I have no doubt in my mind he still is, but only for himself and his friends and family, where they're probably less likely to criticize him. He can now draw to his heart's content, without anyone making fun of him for it. Now he can live out his career as a cartoonist in solitude, drawing all the lesbian blimp women he wants. And if that's what he wants to do, well, who are we to take that away from him? God bless, like and subscribe, and good night. And remember, boys and girls, don't be a Dobson.
Andrew Dobson, professional artist, traces pictures of Big Ben, goes to sell them at conventions. 5 minutes in Photoshop, I hope you die on your way to MCM. On your way to MCM.